So, hey, my name is Anders Omstedt and I am Professor Emeritus here in Göteborg at the Marine Department. And, well, this year I will be 70 years old, so I have been able to be in science and education in almost 50 years. That's great. So I have learned that you can understand science in a better way if you look on it on decadal scale. There is nothing happening really from one year to another, but on decadal scale you can really see lots of progress. I started to educate in math, physics, oceanography and meteorology in the 70s. And I was really bored with the university at that time after that, so I was happy to get a position as a meteorology assistant at SMHI and was given the task to work with winter navigation. So already 73, when I started, I went into thinking about what do we know about ice and what do we don't know about ice. And I was surprised. We didn't know so much. So we need to start field experiments and modeling. And at the same time, lots of effort was put into ice dynamic in the Arctic through the Arctic Ice Dynamic Joint Experiments. And they were putting out buoys, drifting buoys, and from that we learned that sea ice is a fragile material that is plastic and viscous. That was very strange for me. I have never heard about plastic and elastic behavior during my education, so I need to learn something new. But as you know, ice is breaking, and that was the plastic behavior, so the models need to treat that in a proper way. I was starting with thinking about how is cooling taking place, how is ice forming in the sea, and that is through fossil ice, small crystals that are mixed in the turbulent water in the ocean. And then how the ice grows and how the ice melts and how it's drift. And I was happy to work with this up to 85 when I made my PhD on fossil ice dynamics and freezing and cooling and such things. And then in the 80s, that decade, is almost on environmental issue. So I was not in the mainstream of discussion. I was outside where the money was, and that was a very happy time. I had a 10 years period that I could go for myself, and I still worked with this melting and freezing and ice drift, and started to build models, not just process models. I was starting to build system models for the Baltic Sea. I was doing a part in Canada working with the Mackenzie River and Lake Ontario, but I came back, and in the 90s it was all about climate and climate change. And then suddenly I was in the mainstream again. Will the ice disappear in the Baltic Sea or not? It was funny, I was on an ice skating seminar much later, and my seminar was when will the ice disappear in Sweden, and when should you put down your organization for skating? And all the public was booing when I was coming up. That was the first time I had a presentation where the audience was so angry on me. And I said, 2085. You must wonder how I were able to come up with that number. But you that will be living here, maybe you will see that I probably was right. You should put down the ice skating in Sweden 2085. And they hate me for that statement, but it was very funny. In 1990, Baltics was starting, and suddenly it was all about water and heat balances. And the ocean modeling was coming nicely together with the atmospheric model and the land surface modeling. So suddenly we were building system understanding. How was the system working? How was the salinity dependent on the river runoff? And how was the ice condition, the turn of the atmospheric circulation. And at that time I had an ocean model and were able to show that the ocean model itself could tell you very many things about how to close the water and energy cycle. And the answers was in observation. You could go to the Baltic Sea and from temperature you could see the change. And in the salinity you could also see the change in the water balance. So I was rather happy at that time that I could contribute to the development of knowledge. After the first Baltics phase, we were coming to the Baltics phase 2, and then we broadened the scope. We went into biogeochemistry. And at that time we had several groups working both on climate and on eutrophication. Eutrophication was regarded as one of the major threats to the Baltic Sea, so many was working on that. But no one was considering the carbon cycle. They were more concentrating on the neutron cycle. So I was able to form a group with PhD students working on the carbon cycle. And I was very clear in the beginning that if you introduce the carbon dioxide and oxygen cycle into the models, then you were putting climate and eutrophication together. Then suddenly you had an instrument that you could evaluate both climate problems and eutrophication problems. So based on 3 PhD students and lots of support from the Baltics community, I was able to develop new models for the Baltic Sea, including the carbon system. I think that was a really great achievement, and I was very happy to do that. And it took 10 years. So think about going from an idea to have ready results. It goes very slow. Science goes very slow. But on decadal scale you can see very large progress. I have also been written lots about the progress in science and particularly the Baltic Sea. And in the 80s we were thinking that we should sell data to each other. But nowadays data are free. Models are going like everyone is doing their own model, but now the development is going to community models. That is models that is open for all. The meteorological community has really shown a tremendous support to develop databases for all data. So now we can model the Baltic Sea at least 500 or maybe 1,000 years back and 100 years forward. But still, there are so many interesting questions that we are not addressing. I must say, we are always overselling our models. So we are just showing the positive results. We are hiding many things in our models that will give us problem in the future. And during the last 10 years, my main interesting has been towards the understanding of what are the humans doing. Because even if we have lots of progress in science about the Baltic Sea, the management of the Baltic Sea has really failed. And also the management of the ocean in general has failed with overfishing. And now this terrible threat of plastic to the ocean, added to eutrophication, many areas, the anoxic areas are increasing, and poison to the system, and population that growing and using the coastal areas in a very unsustainable way. So I really thinking, how are we doing, people? Why are we treating the ocean and the sea, which we love? Most of us love it. Poetry are giving lots of expression of our love for the ocean, but we treat it as we hated it. So The Old Man and the Sea, the old book of The Old Man and the Sea, that was an interesting by Hemingway. It's a very interesting saying from 1952, the old fishermen say that we always loved the sea and we called it her. But the young people that are having motor ships and that goes for large expenses, they hate the sea and they called it with masculine name. So that was an attitude change described by Hemingway, 52, because after the Second World War, lots of destruction behavior of the ocean has started, and that we are not coping with it yet. We don't know yet how to treat all those threats. So, every young person, every young science is a really joyful activity. It gives you lots of benefits back, both friends and colleagues, and experience of what are your own feelings. So I really recommend young people to go into science, and you should go for the joyful things, the thing that you think is interesting, that really awake the fascination and wonder and away about the nature, because there are lots of problems that needs to be solved, and many of them are fun to solve. Thank you.